Howdy y'all, Sageman here of TAPAS and Stuff Productions. This video is to summarize the contents of my Disney collection, as I've been collecting over the course of the past 30 weeks, and detailing in a segment on my weekly podcast. I started by compiling a list of 212 items from the beginning of the company all the way to this year. The purpose of collecting is twofold. There's the awashing myself in Disney history, always wanted to do that, that's cool. Second, to aid in the creation of Keys and Kingdoms, a loosely Disney-inspired role-playing game. Unoriginal setting, so much as a standard fantasy setting with fairy tale motifs can be original. Every film I watch, I take notes on its concepts and elements that might work in the Keys and Kingdoms universe and try to fit them into the canon. Now you may be thinking, Disney Plus comes out in November. Won't my collection be completely meaningless once presumably every movie on it will be available on the streaming service? And, that's a pretty good point. But I started this collection 30 weeks ago, and at that point I committed to talking about it every week, so I will continue sinking money into the collection like a big idiot until the streaming service comes out, and presumably will make finishing this journey much cheaper from that point. The purpose of this video is to show you the complete contents of my Disney journey. I've prepared a 35-plus page slideshow to guide you through it. We begin with Disney's Golden Age, when they were first starting and retroactively doing pretty well. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs was, of course, the first Disney feature where they kind of found their sea legs. Then came Pinocchio, really introducing that Disney magic. Fantasia was a beautiful experiment in matching animation to music. The Reluctant Dragon, a sort of fictionalized tour through the Disney studio. And then the Golden Age ends with the quietly performing Dumbo and Bambi. The package era is when the company couldn't afford to make feature films due to World War II, so they packaged their short films together and called them features. Saludos Amigos and The Three Caballeros are a duology of short films about Latin America. Make Mine Music, a Fantasia-style collection of musical shorts. Song of the South, which cannot be found or viewed anywhere due to its nostalgic depiction of overly cheerful former slaves, so I didn't actually see it, just studied it as much as I could. Conclusion? Not really worth the trouble. Fun and Fancy Free, a collection of 2 shorts, Melody Time, another series of musical shorts, and The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, containing Disney's famed adaptations of The Wind in the Willows and The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. Then, Disney took a gamble on making another real feature, Cinderella, launching us into the Silver Age, which I divided into 2 sections because there's more films in it. After that was Treasure Island, Disney's first completely live-action feature, then the British literature duology of Alice in Wonderland and Peter Pan, a fascinating adaptation of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, then Disney's famous interpretation of Davy Crockett, King of the Wild Frontier, then the timeless romance Lady and the Tramp, and that beloved tearjerker of tearjerkers, Old Yeller. Then we come upon Sleeping Beauty, arguably the last film of the Silver Age, but I don't subscribe to that interpretation of the ages. For details, see the podcast episode. And then a film about Irish folklore, Darby O'Gill and the Little People. Classic doggo picture, 101 Dalmatians. The nursery rhyme-themed operetta Babes in Toyland. Then we got some known classics, The Sword and the Stone, Mary Poppins, and the Silver Age and the life of Walt Disney himself ends with The Jungle Book. Then we enter the Bronze Age, which I divided into 3 portions. Disney first attempted its comeback with the Aristocats. Then there's Bedknobs and Broomsticks, sort of a spiritual successor to Mary Poppins. The very sexy Anthro Robin Hood. The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, which is a compilation of Winnie the Pooh shorts from previous years. The Rescuers, Pete's Dragon, sci-fi thing The Black Hole, and low-key horror film The Watcher in the Woods. And the second part of the Bronze Age is where my collection stands as of the recording of this video. I've just collected these films and will be watching them for future podcast episodes. We have Dragon Slayer, the Paramount co-production that led to the creation of Touchstone Pictures, the banner for Disney films that aren't especially Disney-esque. The Fox and the Hound, I understand that one's another famous tearjerker. The way ahead of its time computer drama Tron. Something Wicked This May Comes, whatever that may be. Mickey Mouse and his supporting cast return from years of relative obscurity with Mickey's Christmas Carol. Then we get a Wonderful Wizard of Oz adaptation in Return to Oz. And then this darkest of Dark Age films, The Black Cauldron. After that is Basil of Baker Street, better known by its official stupid-ass title of The Great Mouse Detective. Flight of the Navigator, some kind of sci-fi thing, I don't know. The Brave Little Toaster, which I'm not entirely convinced actually counts as a Disney film, but most sources seem to think so, so I'll include it. Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which is a Touchstone film, but one of the two Touchstone films everyone knows is a Disney film, and The Bronze Age ends with Oliver and Company. Then we begin the Disney Renaissance, when Disney first started to grow into the behemoth it is today. I divided it into 5 pages, starting with Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, because we're doing this by calendar year, before we get to the movie that actually started the Renaissance, The Little Mermaid. Then we have DuckTales the movie, Treasure of the Lost Lamp. I could probably get a lot of material from DuckTales itself, but we don't have time for that, so just sticking with the movie. Then the Mickey Mouse short film The Prince and the Pauper that played ahead of The Rescuers Down Under, the first completely digital film ever made. The Rocketeer, I'm curious as to what that's exactly about. Then Beauty and the Beast, always a crowd pleaser. The tightly choreographed musical Newsies, followed by my personal favorite Renaissance film, Aladdin, and Disney's first production with The Muppets, The Muppet Christmas Carol. And this is when my collection starts to include TV series and video games, which I'll probably be doing as their own little blogs independent of my normal podcast. I had many ideas derived from Disney TV series, but to prevent myself getting bogged down, I was very selective in what TV series I would include in this journey. And my first choice was to include the 4 TV series based directly on Renaissance films, the first of which is the Little Mermaid TV series, the only one of those 4 series that's actually possible to legally find and watch right now. I'm kind of counting on the rest of them being on Disney Plus so I don't have to resort to piracy. Yarr. Then we have a talking dog movie with no lips, Homeward Bound: The Incredible Journey, followed by Hocus Pocus, and look at that, 2 Halloween movies in 1 year. We have The Nightmare Before Christmas, which was a Touchstone film until Disney realized it was popular, so they put their name back on it. The film of The Three Musketeers, which I'm sure is decent. Then The Return of Jafar. Yes, I'm including Disney's infamous direct-to-video sequels in this collection. Not all of them, just the ones I think might have some good lore in them. Then the Renaissance hits its peak with The Lion King, and we wrap up this part with The Santa Claus. Then there's Gargoyles, the TV show that's definitely already had a huge impact on the Keys and Kingdoms universe. I've got it all on DVD already. I'm very excited to rewatch it. And I think the Aladdin TV series is pretty good too. I hope I can get access to it. A-tum-ta-tum-ta-tum, we have a Goofy movie. The Renaissance starts to lose some steam with Pocahontas, but then we have Pixar's first feature, Toy Story. And yes, all Pixar films are Disney films, always have been. Notice the big castle logo that's always been at the beginning of every Pixar production. Muppet Treasure Island, a childhood favorite of mine. James and the Giant Peach, ditto. The Hunchback of Notre Dame, one of those vindicated by history pictures. The Aladdin franchise comes to an end with Aladdin and the King of Thieves. And then we have 101 Dalmatians, a Disney live-action remake from nearly 2 decades before that was a cliché. Hercules! Like Hunchback, not a popular film upon release, but looked back on with high regard by those raised on the Renaissance. Pooh's Grand Adventure, The Search for Christopher Robin. There are a lot of Winnie the Pooh films out there, and I skipped nearly all of them, but I had to include this one in the collection for nostalgic and epic reasons. Beauty and the Beast, The Enchanted Christmas, ho-hum, then Mulan, that should be fun. A couple more cheap sequels with Pocahontas 2, Journey to a New World, and The Lion King 2, Simba's Pride. Pixar's sophomore effort, A Bug's Life, and, if I can find it, the Hercules TV series. And in this final segment of the Renaissance, we have Tarzan. Technically the last film of the Renaissance, but again, calendar year. So we're rounding out this segment with the Christmas anthology Mickey's Once Upon a Christmas, then Toy Story 2, Pixar teaching Disney how to do a real sequel, and we hit the millennium with Fantasia 2000. The millennium brings us into what Disney fans euphemistically call the experimental era, which I divided into 7 pages. We start with a couple more DTV sequels, An Extremely Goofy Movie, and The Little Mermaid 2 Return to the Sea. Dinosaur, a film retroactively added to the Disney animated canon because someone really wanted Tangled to be the 50th film in it. Fair enough. Buzz Lightyear of Star Command, The Adventure Begins, the pilot movie of the Buzz Lightyear TV series. Screwball comedy The Emperor's New Groove, science fantasy cult classic Atlantis the Lost Empire, The Princess Diaries, which I can't imagine will provide much lore, but might be a good movie, I don't know, then Pixar's Monsters Incorporated, and finishing up our Renaissance-based TV series with The Legend of Tarzan. In our next segment, we have one of the more highly regarded sequels, Return to Neverland, followed by one of the more terrible ones, The Hunchback of Notre Dame 2. What, no subtitle? Then the biggest success of the experimental era, Lilo and Stitch, and the cult classic Treasure Planet. The year 2002 also brings us Kingdom Hearts, the premiere of the only video game franchise I'll be including in the main collection, since Keys and Kingdoms basically began with the idea of making a better version of Kingdom Hearts. Then we come upon 2003, the busiest year in the journey, with 8 movies I found worthy of my collection. Starting with The Jungle Book 2, then Holes, based on my favorite childhood novel, Atlantis Milo's Return. I skipped most of the sequels that are actually 3 episodes of a failed TV series, but this one might have enough lore to justify its existence. And then Finding Nemo, which was not only the manic obsession of 11-year-old me, but also represents the halfway point of the collection. Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl, intended to be just one of 3 films based on Disney theme park attractions, but you don't see the other 2 here, do ya? The remake of Freaky Friday, a favorite of my family, Stitch the Movie, prelude to the Lilo and Stitch TV series, which we will not be watching, and finally Brother Bear. The following year brings us Mulan 2, one of the more infuriating entries in the sequel collection, The Lion King 1.5, which I found aight, and the film that brutally murdered traditional animation, Home on the Range. Then there's Mickey, Donald, Goofy, The Three Musketeers, Pixar's The Incredibles, and another one that's close to my heart, National Treasure. Then I'll be playing Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories, or rather its 2007 PlayStation remake. I'm not interested in hunting down a Game Boy Advance. I'm not going to be that thorough. Dum-diddy-doo. Wow, 2005 sucks. We have Tarzan 2, teen superhero comedy Sky High, the Disney-distributed indie cartoon Valiant, proper and unnecessarily subtitled sequel Lilo and Stitch 2, Stitch Has a Glitch, the disaster that made everybody want traditional animation back, Chicken Little, odd spin-off Kronk's New Groove, and the C.S. Lewis epic The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. We have Bambi 2, okay, The Wild, another one I'm pretty sure Disney just distributed, Pixar's Cars, which sad to say is the basis of most of my friendships, the conclusion of the Lilo and Stitch TV series, Leroy and Stitch. Part 1 of an overly epic tale, Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Man's Chest, then Brother Bear 2, and the twice as epic and impressive Kingdom Hearts 2. And final segment of this era starts with the surprisingly impressive Cinderella 3, A Twist in Time, followed by another time travel film, Meet the Robinsons. A trilogy comes to a clusterfuck of an ending with Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End, Pixar brings us Ratatouille, Disney Princess Enchanted Tales Follow Your Dreams. That's an anthology of 2 Disney princess stories, one with Jasmine, one with Aurora. I just kind of wanted to check it out, see what they did with the closest thing they ever did to a Sleeping Beauty sequel, you know. Self-parody Enchanted, and then Phineas and Ferb, not an especially Disney-esque Disney show, but it does represent the endless possibility of imagination, so I wanted to dip into it. Pixar's WALL-E. The Narnia saga continues with The Chronicles of Narnia Prince Caspian. The Disney Toon Studio mercifully does one last sequel, The Little Mermaid Ariel's Beginning, before moving on to Tinkerbell films, starting with, well, Tinkerbell. And the experimental era comes to an end with Bolt. That long silence was me realizing that I've pronounced it both era and era in this video alone. I'm very inconsistent. The final segment, the Disney Revival, also in 7 pieces. Only the future will tell us whether the Disney Revival is still going on in the present. Doesn't much matter, soon it'll be a capital offense to claim we're not in the golden age of Disney. So we have Pixar's beautiful masterpiece known simply as Up, a piece of shit guinea pig film G-Force, Tinkerbell and the Lost Treasure, a dark mo-capped adaptation of A Christmas Carol, and the film that actually kicked off the revival by bringing back traditional animation, if only temporarily, The Princess and the Frog. And that year also brought us Kingdom Hearts 358 Days Over 2. Yes, that's the actual title and how you pronounce it, because Japan. 2010 brings us Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland. Pixar gives us another heartbreaker with Toy Story 3. The crew behind National Treasure gives us The Sorcerer's Apprentice. I guess if you count that and Alice, this is when the live-action remake trend began, right at the start of the decade. Tinkerbell and the Great Fairy Rescue, that's a lame sequel title if I ever heard one. Why did I put every Tinkerbell film on this list? Anyway, here's Rapunzel, better known by its official stupid-ass title of Tangled. Tron Legacy, a sequel as good and epic as it was unnecessary. And Disney's Narnia saga comes to a premature end with The Chronicles of Narnia, The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. And we have the heartbreaking prequel, Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep. We come upon Mars Needs Moms. I hear it's a piece of shit, but it might provide some sci-fi inspirations. We get a quieter installment in Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides. The reduced scale was much appreciated, in my opinion. Cars 2, which, yes, all my friends actually like. I don't know what's wrong with them. Winnie the Pooh, possibly the last traditionally animated film ever to be made. Sobbity sob. Pixie Hollow Games, which I think is a Tinkerbell TV special rather than a movie. Why did I put every Tinkerbell film on this list? And Disney finally does something with a beloved franchise they had recently purchased with The Muppets. This year also brings us Kingdom Hearts Recoded, and the first season of ABC's Once Upon a Time, another big influence on Keys and Kingdoms, given the way it combines fairy tales with high fantasy, with increasing amounts of actual Disney content being used as the show goes on. 2012 brings us John Carter and Pixar's Brave, two films that are way better than everybody says. Secret of the Wings, probably the best Tinkerbell film. Tim Burton's Frankenweenie, and the very magnificent Wreck-It Ralph. Then we sorta kinda near the finale with Kingdom Hearts 3D Dream Drop Distance. Then, what else we got? There's Oz the Great and Powerful, Monsters University, The Lone Ranger, Planes. 2013 was kind of a dull year, wasn't it? Until we got the charming yet overplayed phenomenon Frozen. And Saving Mr. Banks, a Disney-fied retelling of the making of a Disney-fied film. 2013 also debuted Sophia the First, a young children's series set in an overly fantastical fairy tale universe that'll surely provide us with some Keys and Kingdoms inspiration. La-da-di-da-da. This page gives us Tinkerbell film The Pirate Fairy, Muppet sequel Muppets Most Wanted, Maleficent, which I thought was mostly pretty good. I don't know what the problem is. Planes, Fire and Rescue, Big Hero 6, that's good. Disney's adaptation of Into the Woods. Then the following year gives us the final Tinkerbell film, Tinkerbell and the Legend of the Neverbeast. The remake of Cinderella. You know, I originally wanted the art style of Keys and Kingdoms to look like live-action versions of Disney characters, but then Disney went and started doing that on their own, and it turns out it sucks, so I'll stick to classic Disney as the art style. Thank you. Tomorrowland, whatever that's about. Pixar's Inside Out. The Disney Channel's Descendants. I didn't even consider any other Disney Channel movie for this collection, but given this one's crossover elements, I thought I'd see if it had any value. Probably not. And finally, we get two Pixar films in 1 year, and their first tragic and undeserved flop, The Good Dinosaur. We've got Zootopia, Noise, the remake of The Jungle Book, unnecessary sequel Alice Through the Looking Glass, very necessary sequel Finding Dory, Steven Spielberg's The BFG, which sadly is not a movie about a big fucking gun, but rather a Roald Dahl adaptation, the remake of Pete's Dragon, and finally, we bookend 2016 with some real Disney films, Moana. Then we have Beauty and the Beast, seemingly kicking off a trend of making the live-action remakes identical to the original films, the adequate Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Men Tell No Tales, Cars 3, the only Cars films I'll admit to enjoying, even though I totally love the whole franchise, and two consecutive Pixar films, Coco. And as Square Enix continues to give us random crap to forestall the release of Kingdom Hearts 3, I'll be tackling the new material found in Kingdom Hearts 2.8 Final Chapter Prologue. And my collection ends in 2018 with A Wrinkle in Time, Incredibles 2, Christopher Robin, The Nutcracker and the Four Realms, whatever the hell that is, then Ralph Breaks the Internet, and finally, Mary Poppins Returns. The final item on the list, Kingdom Hearts 3, one of 3 big franchises in the collection that come to an end in the year 2019. Now, as I mentioned, there are 212 items on my list, but the chronological list of movies, with some TV shows and video games sprinkled in, was only 209 things. The last 3 items are more of an expansion pack. Item 210 is short films. I'll be watching all the short films that Disney and Pixar have put together in their quest to innovate their storytelling technologies. As many as I can find, but again, only as far as the year 2018. Item number 211 is Marvel and Star Wars. Relative newcomers to the Disney family, Disney's done some pretty spectacular stuff with them, and don't rub it in our face too much that they own them, and I thought I'd pay some service to that, throw in some inspiration. First comes the Star Wars Skywalker Saga, watching them in release order, because why the hell would you ever watch or read a series in chronological order instead of release order? Start with the classic original series. The original Star Wars, retroactively known as A New Hope, then The Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. Then we go into the shitty prequel trilogy, The Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, and Revenge of the Sith. Of course, the first 2 trilogies had nothing to do with Disney, they're the domain of 20th Century Fox, which Disney owns now. Shit, maybe that's why they did it. get both of their previous big purchases completely under their thumb. Guess the whole series will be on Disney Plus now. As with everything involving the Fox buyout, that's friggin' terrifying, but convenient for me. And then, of course, there's the Disney trilogy, The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and the upcoming The Rise of Skywalker. Then I'll be watching the Infinity Saga of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, starting with Phase 1, which was pre-Disney, so good on Marvel Studios for kickstarting things without Disney backing them up. But man, this first phase seems so quaint now with all the big stuff the MCU is doing these days. So here we have Iron Man, The Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2, Thor, Captain America the First Avenger, and The Avengers. All good films, but again, by the standards set by Phase 3, quaint. The now Disney-owned series escalates with Phase 2, starting off a bit dull with Iron Man 3 and Thor the Dark World, then hitting a high point with Captain America the Winter Soldier and Guardians of the Galaxy, and ending somewhere in the middle with Avengers Age of Ultron and Ant-Man. And the Infinity Saga ends with the sprawling Phase 3, lacking a single dull moment. Captain America Civil War, Doctor Strange, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, good stuff, and it just keeps on getting better. Spider-Man Homecoming, Thor Ragnarok, Black Panther, before it all culminates in Avengers Infinity War. We get some cool-down time with Ant-Man and the Wasp and Captain Marvel before the saga hits its grand finale with Avengers Endgame. And apparently the upcoming Spider-Man Far From Home is considered by the producer, Feige be praised, to be the last film of the Infinity Saga rather than the first film of what follows, so sure, throw it in there. As for what Marvel and Star Wars do in 2020 and beyond, I don't really give a damn. As far as I'm concerned, those franchises end this year. They're done. Don't get me wrong, nobody loves the MCU more than I do, and Star Wars is okay, I guess, but I'm done being invested. I'm good. And item number 212 is every major American traditionally animated film not made by Disney. Because they might have cool tropes I'd want to use as well. Besides, most traditionally animated films out there were trying to bite off Disney anyway. Heck, some of them even have crappy sequels, so I'll get attempts at Disney magic, even if they're not quite up to snuff. I've divided this final stage into 3 sections. First, the complete directorial works of Don Bluth. The 80s were his golden age when he could whoop Disney's ass, starting with The Secret of NIMH, his first and greatest work, then An American Tail, The Land Before Time, and All Dogs Go to Heaven. Then his dung age, a period so embarrassing he's not even credited for some of them. Unfortunately, they were made at Don Bluth Studios, so he couldn't really escape. Rockadoodle, Thumbelina, A Troll in Central Park, and The Pebble and the Penguin. Yikes. Finally, we have Bluth's team-ups with 20th Century Fox, Anastasia, Bartok the Magnificent, and Titan A.E. Fox. They'll probably be on Disney+. And then Don Bluth kind of disappeared off the face of the earth there, didn't he? If he ever ends up making that Dragon Slayer movie he's been trying to put together, I'll add that to the list. Second stage is all the traditionally animated works of DreamWorks Animation, back when they still did that. Highly underrated, sadly overshadowed by all the Shrek clones. The Glorious, The Prince of Egypt, the very funny and charming The Road to El Dorado, and then Joseph King of Dreams, Spirit's Stallion of the Cimarron, and Sinbad, Legend of the Seven Seas. And finally we come upon Other. Again, the category is major American traditionally animated films. So this is by no means a complete list, just the first few that came to mind. Feel free to suggest more that I might add to this section. I'm aware that I'm inviting a shitload of joke suggestions there, and I'm fine with that. So the first 10 movies that come to mind for Other in this category were Hanna-Barbera's Charlotte's Web, Rankin Bass's The Last Unicorn, Filmation's Happily Ever After, then we have Fern Gully The Last Rainforest by some company, I'm sure, Amblin's We're Back, a Dinosaur Story, The Swan Princess by a guy so hacky he directs his own crappy sequels, Amblin's Balto, and 3 from Warner Brothers, Cats Don't Dance, Quest for Camelot, and ending the entire collection on a high note with Brad Bird's The Iron Giant, unless somebody reminds me of another traditionally animated movie that came out after that one. Finally, we have what I'm calling the postscript inspirations, things I decided I should watch for inspiration after I completed the list, arising both when I realized I wasn't entirely satisfied with my 212 items, and when I realized it didn't make much sense to end a big Disney marathon with the non-Disney stuff. Rather than my previously chronological list, this part of the collection will be viewed in the order I decided to retroactively add them. I'm once again open for suggestions. If you can think of anything Disney-related I excluded from the list that could provide me with decent lore and universe building. So there's 6 items on that list so far at the moment. There's Wander Over Yonder, a Disney Channel series I realized was one of the original inspirations for Keys and Kingdom's cosmic setting, so it was wrong to exclude it, thus leading to the creation of this postscript bit of the collection. From there, I decided to also include Gravity Falls, some nice mythical Americana to throw in, and I thought if I'm doing the Buzz Lightyear movie, it couldn't hurt to do the Buzz Lightyear TV series as well, if it can be found. Again, need to expand the cosmic Keys and Kingdoms universe. Disney Princess Enchanted Journey, a little video game that my little sister used to play. It's real cute, and a Disney Princess-related quest. It's kind of the whole atmosphere I'm going for, so might as well. And then I said fuck it, and decided to throw in Frozen 2 and Toy Story 4, because they're sequels, and they look like they'll do some good, decent building of their universes. And so, in the unlikely event Disney ever does something original again, I'll try my best to ignore it, but any direct follow-ups to something on the Disney part of the list, sequels as opposed to remakes, I'll probably add those in for the lore. So, that's the past, present, and future of my retrospective collection thingy. For my thoughts on each film and what they can add to Keys and Kingdoms, please feel free to check out the Tapas and Stuff Productions podcast. It's usually the final segment. There are time codes in all the descriptions and pictures in all the thumbnails of which movies I'm watching that episode. Thanks for joining me in this summary of my journey. I hope to see you taking part in the real journey as well. Ciao!